Are wedges really just wedges? Why does one of the most overlooked clubs in the hands of an everyday player get so much attention in a better player's bag? With pros using different shafts, weights, lie angles, and even changing them out 2 or more times a year, what are we, the average player, missing, and can we do better? Let's find out. Welcome to part 1 of dialing in your wedges. After reviewing my 2025 baseline numbers, I'm taking things back to square one. The goal for today is to adjust the lie angle on each of my 3 wedges in order to improve the strike and the directional control, ultimately improving consistency with each club. The rules for today, I'm going to take 4 shots from the full and 4 shots from the 9 o'clock position, taking the best 3 from each of those sets. Then I'm going to test on a lie board, and from there, make any adjustments that are necessary. After that, I'm gonna retest and start it all over. Okay, so after the adjustment to standard across the 3 wedges, at the 50 degree, I've kind of encountered the first real inconsistency of the 3 as a whole. One of the largest things that I'm seeing after doing the lie board between the 3 is I'm getting significantly more strike or contact towards the toe when I am doing the lie board test. And that would kind of make sense because I'm really feeling that with a lot of the turf interaction, as well as the inconsistency in the strike. And even on the 90 degree, I had to take 6 shots just to get 3 that were even usable and not just complete mishits. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna bump this up 1 degree to start, leaving it at the 50 degrees aloft, and we'll see how it works from there. So it's taken a little while to get into this breakdown, so I figure why not knock it out on a layover while I'm here in San Francisco. One of the big things I wanted to dig into before really going in to all the information from hitting these wedges was what is the big picture focus for this series for dialing in. And I think it's ultimately going to be important to break this out because you might not necessarily be able to knock out all of these things at one time, or depending on how your game is progressing, it might take time or things might change in your swing, which might require you to address certain parts of how your clubs are performing for you at different times of the year or from year to year. So the big things that I'm going to be looking for throughout this series is addressing strike, directional control, the launch on each of these clubs, eventually the spin. We're going to look at the club build consistency for each of these wedges as well. So that's something if you're buying off the rack or if you're changing your grips out, how that's affecting swing weights, or ultimately what the actual loft and lie of these clubs are if you have been hitting them for a while or if they're just coming from the manufacturer. And then the last thing being the age of these clubs. Wedges specifically are something that get beat up quite quickly depending on the conditions that you're playing in. And the more that those faces wear down, the less spin performance and the less consistency you're ultimately going to be getting out of those wedges themselves. For this video specifically, we're going to be looking at the strike, the directional control, and then ultimately seeing if by addressing those lie angles and getting things set up to improve each of those factors, if that creates more consistency or if that's going to lead into the next phase of this in order to find what's that special sauce that we need to make these clubs perform better for us. So with that being said, let's take a look at the numbers and see how we did. As we break out the numbers, we can really see if we look at the comparisons between the original baseline numbers at the top and then ultimately our final results for the full swing at the bottom. Really an improvement overall in just the left miss orientation compared to the baseline numbers. We see improvements in the ball speed, the launch consistency, not necessarily the actual launch angle itself, the side angle orientation. So I was really kind of hoping to get more of a center or right starting line, given my normal ball flight tends to be a right to left. Ultimately, the yardage consistency improved across the three taken as a whole. I did, however, see some decreases in spin consistency and an increase in the launch angle, like I had mentioned. There are a couple factors that could potentially be causing that. In early April, when I was doing the baseline, it was about 40 some degrees. In the garage, right around 50 degrees. And then when I was doing the wedge test, it was a little bit warmer. The other one being I might not have been as attentive at cleaning the wedge face in between the individual tests and ensuring that there was a clean surface that we were working off of, which could have potentially led to either increase in launch or that spin variability that we saw. One of the things to note, and I did notice this in a couple different iterations of the shots that I was hitting, was that in the 9 o'clock position swing that I was taking, I did find myself striking the ball more consistently. And whether that was a component of the shaft profile, making that position and making that swing speed a little bit easier, or from a technique standpoint, if I was just more stable in that position or maintaining that shaft lean, maintaining that club head control through impact, which is something I'm going to keep tabs on as I work my way through this progression and the changes that I'll be making. So with that being said, let's look a little bit closer here and start checking out each of these clubs. Now jumping in first here to the 58 degree, the big stuff that stands out is the carry is going the yardage that I expect out of this golf club for the swings that I was making. And with those changes that I made to the lie angle, I was able to create a right starting line orientation for both the 90 degree and the full swing. Some of the quick negatives that stood out were just the significantly increased launch angle for both of the shots relative to the baseline test. But really, as we break things out and look at the baseline numbers in comparison to where we went, we see that one, I was about a quarter degree off from the stated lie, as well as the stated loft for the club. So like I said, we returned everything back to a standard lie and then the stated loft for each of the clubs for beginning this test. And I can say pretty plainly that I saw a significant improvement on the number of tragically bad shots that I was hitting throughout this test. There really weren't too many that were just total mishits, and I have even seen that more in partial shot situations throughout a variety of course positions that I've been at, as I've had an opportunity to play with these clubs after I've made these changes for each of the 3 wedges. So that's been an overwhelming positive, I think, from this test, was that improvement in just the turf interaction, which was really the first goal that I had going into this test. The next thing was the directional control, which I do feel with creating more of that right starting line with that draw shape that I typically play with has been a positive, and I have seen a difference as far as not a lot of far left misses off of greens when I have been playing with the club on the course. The next thing being, did this improve the consistency on the shot? And as we look at our numbers, we can see that there was a bit of improvement through a variety of different factors, that being yardage, the side angle, the launch angle consistency, despite it being higher, was better, and then the ball speed and efficiency numbers were better than in the baseline test that we saw. So I think despite some of those numbers not necessarily being in the window that I want them to be, I think we did see an improvement by addressing that feel or that feedback with the strike that I was getting by improving that turf interaction, adjusting that lie angle down to that more standard position. Now jumping into the 54 degree here, I think without a doubt this was the best performing wedge of the 3 sets. And I think that's pretty much consistent throughout all categories. I saw pretty uniform ball speed and strike as far as the efficiency on each of the 9 o'clock position, as well as the full swing, even though the launch was higher, which again, like we talked about, could be attributed to some of those factors that I discussed. The spin progression was about what I would see, even though the standard deviation there was quite high. Got the start line to be right of center, and then the yardage consistency was pretty much spot on for both of the shots. Looking back at the baseline test from before, we can see in comparison to where we ended up, still left of center line ultimately, but a better overall flight path for the golf shot. And then just comparing the numbers from before, again, taking into account it was quite a bit colder when I was doing that original test in terms of the ball speed that we were getting out of it there. But good overall consistency improvements in a couple of different categories, despite the spin progression being a little bit different and the launch consistency being slightly worse. And the last thing being with the 54 degree, and I forgot to touch on this with the 58, but doing the live board test on the 58 and also the 54 here, I did see the strike being a little bit more out towards the toe than being absolutely centered on both of these wedges. The thing is though, the feedback that I was getting was quite a bit better on each of these wedges throughout both of the different shot variations that I was hitting. I felt like it was easier for me to get through the ground, easier for me to control how I was ultimately hitting the golf ball and coming in contact with the club face. I thought the efficiency numbers that I was seeing on both the 58 and the 54 were ultimately better than what I was getting out of the baseline test at that 2 degree upright, 2 degree-ish upright position that I had originally selected. And as one of my fitter friends has always said, toe is always your friend with the wedges. And I have seen that again with like in the 58, seen a significant improvement in the performance of these wedges when I have been out playing on the course in terms of my ability to manipulate the club head around the greens, creating different lofted shots with these wedges, and then utilizing the bounce appropriately to help support the turf interaction that I'm ultimately going for in order to get the ball where I need it to go. So I'd say overwhelming positive across the board on the 54. And maybe this is something like what I'm seeing out of this wedge that I need to key into a little bit more precisely to try to repeat with these other wedges, depending on how the test goes throughout. Next up is really the only negative portion of this test, which turned out to be pretty lucky given that I largely just blindly returned all of the lie angles back to a standard position in order to see how they would have performed. And we can see this as we look into the numbers from the 50 degree at standard loft. And just the immediate feedback and all that I really need to go into this, which I think is an important thing for anybody watching this to really take away, is that if you are hitting a golf shot or if you're using any club in your bag, and whether that's your driver all the way down to even your putter. And if for the life of you, you cannot seem to make the golf ball do what you are trying to make it do, and you feel like you might put a good swing on it, or you feel like you're working super hard, whatever it might be, I think it's just important that you just take pause and understand that there might be something happening under the hood that you ultimately need to address, or maybe have somebody look at it to see if they can make an improvement. Because it might actually not be you, it might not be how you're swinging it. It could just be the fact that maybe in this instance, the lie angle was off and I was digging the toe into the ground before I was really having a chance to get the club face to the ball. So I bumped it up 1 degree, and I saw a pretty quick change ultimately with the performance of the club. So as we look into the 50 degree at 1 degree up, I would say of the 3 wedges, this was probably the worst performing from a full swing perspective. And especially looking at this chart, you can really kind of see what I was talking about in terms of my ability to control the golf club from the 9 o'clock position was ultimately quite a bit better than the full in some of those instances. And I'm not going to really shrink it too much because it is quite possible that it is something to do with the shaft, which, spoiler alert, these shafts are no longer in these wedges, and I'm looking forward to getting into the next stage of this test. But I think it's ultimately something that you can use to work from, and I was getting the golf ball started on the right side of center line, which is one of the main goals, and I did see generally good consistency on the performance of each of these shots. And at the end of the day, I did feel that the strike consistency that I was able to maintain at this given lie angle setting was ultimately still doing a pretty good job. So it was worth moving forward from this. And as we look at the numbers from the baseline test to now, we could see 1/2 degree off on the wedge, and that was also 1/2 degree off on the lie angle as well. So 2 factors there. Again, lack of consistency amongst all 3 of the wedges in terms of the amount of difference between the lie and loft that we were seeing on each of them. And that's something that's going to happen. These wedges are from August of 2022 when I looked them up last. So again, that's getting into the age of the clubs and whether that's having an effect on the performance of the club itself. And as we work through the numbers, ball speed, pretty much the same, a little bit less consistent. Launch angle, a little bit higher, around the same ballpark consistency. Spin, a little bit higher, a little bit less consistent, but I did get that start line to the right like we talked about. And then the yardage was just kind of in the same ballpark. So nothing really that stands out that seems super special about that shot itself. And then as we look into the live bore test for it, in comparison to the standard test, which was far out towards the toe, I did see that this test was quite a bit more centered on the wedge. Something worth taking into account as I continue on and see how that strike location progresses towards the later parts of this test. And the last thing I do want to have a look at in order to possibly keep tabs on throughout the multiple parts of this series is my ability to deliver this club in the way in which it needs to be making its way to the ball. And if I just look at these numbers really quick and I can see between a full swing and then a 9 o'clock shot on it, I did see quite a bit more consistency in that 9 o'clock shot than in the full swing. I'll be curious to see going forward if making some of these changes with the shaft, addressing the swing weights, or whatever it might be, can ultimately improve my ability to have that higher level of consistency with a larger golf swing when I am hitting these wedges. And I'm excited to see if that ends up making a difference. And with that being said, I want to thank you for tuning in. Like I had said, there's going to be multiple parts to this series, and I'm excited for you to kind of come with me on this journey as I play around with these different factors that can be affecting these wedges and hopefully get to a final solution that's going to result in much better performance out on the course. And like I had said previously, these shafts are no longer in the wedges that I used for this test as well as the baseline. So I'm excited to see how those the new shafts that I have in the wedges perform, to talk about it a little bit more in depth along the lines of this theme of what a lot of pros are doing with their bags, with their shafts progressions in their set, and how they're ultimately using these clubs as tools to get the best performance out of them possible. So stay tuned for that video to come. If you have not checked out the baseline video, go give that a look. Drop some comments in, just tell me how you're working on your game anything that you're seeing on these videos or anything that you might want to see in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.